Morning, it's October 29th, Saturday morning, 6 a.m. Kids are in bed. I'm not going to be bugged doing this video. I'm a pretty busy guy over this summer with construction. I haven't done any videos probably for like a year. And yeah, I've just been taking my time figuring things out with my piston ring-in gap, what I'm all going to do, waiting for things to get done like machine work. That happened over the summer. And it took longer. I mean, during COVID, people had a lot of time on their hands. Guess what they did? They went to the garage, they tore the motor out, and they sent it to the machine shop. Well, instead of like a 2-week to a month waiting list, on my engine block alone, that was 7 months there to do the crank, rods, inspect it all, polish the crank, machine and bore out the block, just the whole 9 yards on that. My heads didn't take as long, but I went through a different guy. He's a mom and pop store. Still cost a decent amount of money, but I got it back after 2 months. He didn't have as long as a line, but he specializes more in race car engines for circle track, dirt racing out at Eagle, stuff like that. But today I want to talk about ring-in gap and how important it is for ring-in gap and different pistons. So your OEM piston ring-in gap on a 4.6 is 16 thou. That's all you need. Now, if you're going to run more power through to this piston, these are really good pistons actually. You could run it to like a 19 thou ring-in gap if you're going to do some fun. These are pretty durable. They could take some power. These pistons here, they take 450 horse easy, no problem at all day long. At the wheel, I should say. But give or take over time, the pins, the wrist pins, if I'm saying it correctly. Yeah, they have a tendency to flex a little, and then I have free floating pins on this Mark 8 engine, and it's going to give a lot more play and put stress in different areas. So if one side is not moving at all under high stress, the other side's going to be moving, whether it be the pistons. It's your wrist pin. Goes in here. I don't want to push it in, it's dry. But with your connecting rod, especially, you'll get some wear here or wear here, wherever it flexes. But that's not under normal circumstances. That's when you're running a decent amount of boost or NOS, which at that point you probably shouldn't be running these. Yeah, they can take a lot, but I got a different piston, and I get the names confused, hyper-eutectic, whatever. That one's a very hard aluminum. It has a lot of silicon in it. And the ring-in gap is 16, I don't know the math with me, but times 40, so it brings the ring-in gap all the way up to 22 thou. And that's just for daily driving. Why? This piston holds a lot of heat. It doesn't dissipate at all. A cast piston will dissipate heat really good, but when you first start it up, you got some piston slap. And then it doesn't stop until the engine's fully warmed up. And forged pistons, the same thing. And the nice thing about forged piston is it's really strong and durable, but it's flexible. So if you have a bad tune, it's not going to shatter on you. These pistons, really hard. They're not prone to scuffing at all. and they're really durable, so you're not going to be busting these up if you're running too much boost. But at the same time, you start getting a little bit of a knock. These things can shatter. They're just that hard. So these pistons here are good for like 500 horse. The guy said, 25 ring in gap, I can run this thing up to 15 pounds of boost. I told him, well, my rods will probably fail before this piston fails. And that's what I want to do for this engine build. I'm not trying to build the most expensive thing in the world. I just want to enjoy a nice daily driver with a little bit of fun. So, you choose your own ring in gap. Say this is 22, and, they want you to go 3 thou over for 15. Say you only want to do 7 to 10 boost, PSI. Just 2 over is probably good enough for that. 25 keeps you safe if you make any mistakes. If you're really good at what you're doing, just do, 24 thou or 23 thou. It all depends how much boost you're going to have and if you have a good tune. Now, this car here has knock sensors. And at that time, gas is still pretty much the same. But if you have to run E87, I'm sorry, I didn't even say that right. But, ethanol with 87 octane, you want to have those knock sensors because it was 9.98 to 1 compression. And if you get a little bit bad gas, you can get some knocking. Now, with these new pistons and it's bored 20 over, it brings up to right at 10 to 1 compression. So knock sensors are very important. Now, some people will not have knock sensors, but they changed their timing for high compression. The 2 valve didn't need knock sensors. It was running like 9.5 to 1 compression. You don't need knock sensors. The fuel's good enough. So I'm going to talk about ring in gap now. Let's get to that. When it comes to filing, what I like to do is do a round circle. Just get it down to like 11 or 12 thou. So that way I'm not getting frustrated. I just did one at a time. I would mark it. Because with me, I got life. I'm always busy. But you may not be able to see it from here. But I got an orange and I got a white. And each one stood for a ring. You can flip it one or the other, the top ring, bottom ring. But the important thing is I have to have 2 marks. And when I came back to a job, I thought a set of rings were already done. Well, it's a good thing I marked only 1 dot. And after I'm done with every single ring, it's just safe to keep them in here for each cylinder. Now, when I'm going to take them out, I'm going to get little baggies and mark them for each individual cylinder. And I'm going to line up every piston with each rod that's slightly heavier or slightly lighter. I put some weights down on stuff. And I don't think I have an extra ring around to play with. 1 second. Stick them together. So when you're grinding, doing your ring in gap, this is so messy. Sticky. I had these piston rings and everything soaking in parts cleaner. I just took them out, and the stuff I wasn't going to reuse, I just tossed it aside. Probably know this came from the Honda engine build, the V6. did. Yeah. Anyways, so for ring end gap, you want to be able to look at the sunlight or to check to see if it's flat and flush. Now what I do is I turn my flashlight upside down, flashlight on, and I'll lay a clean paper towel over the top and over the flashlight to darken it just enough. And then I'll look over here. I'll see if there's any light shining through. That's the easiest way. When you're looking up at spotlights, you're seeing all kinds of... It doesn't work for me. So yeah, this works for me. It's the right brightness. You can use, you know, it's bright enough in here. You could use a, you know, white background and look. But I start off, I push this edge here. I don't know if you got these two little rods here sticking out. I push it here, like this. I'm only doing one side, but I have these rings pushed up against here. It kind of gives me a rough idea of where I'm grinding. And then you only go like... So you're getting really close. You just do, you know, 5 turns, then check it. Another 2 turns, then check. I mean, you do 2 turns, 3 turns, like that's a thou. That's a thou off. It happens very fast. It'll sneak up on you and bite in the ass. I was gapping the oil sealing rings, and the gap for that is 18 to 24. Well, I wanted to do 20, just crossed. You know, I don't want to be burning a whole lot of oil, but I want to have a little bit of a gap in case there's gas trapped in between the 2 piston rings. The problem with piston rings is if you get gas trapped between these 2 piston rings, it's building up a pressure. And I want that pressure to blow through. I don't want to have a bunch of pressure between the 2 piston rings and then have them decide one wants to give and bust the top off or go down and break that. You want to have a little bit of a give. Now, for OEM, well, actually for this piston is also, you know, the top ring gap is 22 thou, but the oil sealing ring, the cast iron one, that you can run OEM. It doesn't matter. The top part is very hot, and that's why you have a much bigger gap on top here than what you need down here. For every piston's different. You gotta call up your manufacturer. That's what I did with this company. Now, I hate talking to people on the phone. Nothing but bad luck. I called these guys, well, their hotline number, and they deal with a couple other companies. Now, this originally was based in America, but they're making them in Mexico right now. Nothing wrong with that. Ford's making cars in Mexico. A lot of people are making cars. It's just the new Canada. That's all it is. But I got someone right away. I was impressed. I got this lady on the phone, really nice. And then she switched me over to the guy that knew what I wanted to hear. And I told him, it's like, well, piston ring gap is 16 thou. And this is telling me to do 40 over. I mean, the mathematics is like times 40 equals 22. I didn't write any of that down, but it's just better for you to call the manufacturer of the piston, what the ring and gap is, what kind of piston rings you're running. Now, these pistons call for a shallow ring groove. So they have more aluminum in here because you got less of a space. If you put a factory piston ring on here, it's going to push against the the inside of the piston, it's not going to drop in at all because you're going to have too much ring fatness sticking out. You know, you want a shallow ring groove pistons. And a couple of reasons. Well, I think the only reason why is they want more material. They want more beef. They don't want these pistons breaking up if they can add a little bit more material. And also, these are like they're called low drag piston rings, so you get more power out of it, but you don't get as many miles. Now, with these set of piston rings, you know they say you can get 200,000 out of it, 200,000 miles, and that's not like racing it. A true race engine, if you're dealing with a Mustang, Camaro, whatever, you got to rebuild that engine every 30,000 to 80,000 miles. You're just being on it. You may only need to just freshen it up, tear the motor down, and put new rings on, and home out the cylinder and slap it back together with some new bearings too, crank and rod bearings. Stuff like that. There's a reason why people tear their engine down on off season when they're not racing. The next season they might be good, and all of a sudden they have a problem. And their compression's not as much because they're just beating the hell out of those engines. But to go back to piston rings, when I file it, look up or look at my flashlight with the light on, I'm checking for that gap. And the reason why you don't want to do, I could push this in and do both at the same time. Wow, it's so much faster, so much faster. The problem is if you got like a chamfer on one side or the other, and you're trying to straighten out both sides, your ring gap may be like 11 or 13, but by the time you straighten out both sides, instead of 16, you might have 18. It just happens that fast. So you want to just take your time. My advice to anyone, this takes forever, is just do a set of rings, either before you go to work or when you come home. You don't want to have a lot of noise. You play your music, whatever, but you don't want kids running in and out, get distracted. And you definitely want to do this when you're pissed off, because you're going to make a mistake. You're trying to build this engine precisely the way you want it. You want to take your time on piston rings. So I don't think there's too much else I could talk about. But you got cast pistons, so they're good. They had their time. You look at Chevy 350s, Ford Windsors, and at the top of the cylinder, you got all this wear, and you got pistons slapping. Well, you take that same motor there's hypo and hypertectic pistons. I can't say the two. This one has silicone, whatever. This one has a lot. So you put one of these pistons in that motor, you're not going to have all that wear. You're not going to have all that bouncing around when it's warming up. But what you're going to have with forged pistons is you're still going to have that bouncing around. It's not going to be as bad. It's going to be way better than 1960s. But are you building your motor to make it last 200,000 miles? Or are you building it to, have a lot of fun? That's the choices you got to make when you're doing pistons. Now, I want to have this car for a long time. I've been wanting to rebuild this engine or build this engine ever since I first learned about it in the concept car Mustang that they had like in '93, I think it was. And it had the same motor, but obviously different crank and rods, but similar to the Cobra itself. I think it was called the Mach 1, or it was a Cobra. I don't know. But it was a concept car, beautiful red. And they had this motor in it. Well, I didn't know they were having it in the Lincoln Mark 8. This motor first came in the Mark 8. Then they upgraded it and made it a Cobra motor and stronger crank rods. And different cams. But that motor itself, it looked so awesome. It was 4 valves per cylinder. It was perfect. They had a supercharger on it. And I had it at 450 horse. It was a concept car. Now, later on, when they had the Terminator, I think it was like 375. To start out with the B heads. My car, I'm running, no, those were C heads. I'm running B heads on this car here. I want to keep it original Lincoln. I love Lincoln. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not going to be running 10s or anything. Just want a nice daily driver for me and my wife to go to church and just have a lot of fun. So, well, that's probably enough rambling on. I'm going to get back to finishing up my piston rings. I got to check every oil sealing ring in the scraper. Now, when you buy these, this is for 20 thou over, just to let you know, 20 thou over. The problem with these piston rings is these are perfect for forged pistons. Forged pistons, they bore this out slightly more. I mean, it's just so slight. So with a forged piston, it expands more, so they have to make more room. Get rid of the sound, my heater came on. So these piston rings, they're filed to fit, and they would have been perfect for forged. Now these hyper-eutectic pistons, they didn't have to bore it out as much, so which is nice. I got more cylinder wall, more material, more steel, so it makes it stronger. And down the road, if I ever do want to bring out just another time, I probably won't ever rebuild this motor again, but I could go to forged pistons and bore them out that extra, like 1 thou or 5 thou or what. No, it's more than that. Let's see here. It's probably like 5 thou more, maybe 8 more. I don't know. But anyways, I lost my track of thought. Oh yeah, the piston rings. Yeah, so these would have been a lot nicer to file for a forged piston. I had to take a decent amount of material off of these because they're a smaller piston. Now, they say 20 over. Well, you don't have your cylinder bored and then go buy pistons. You buy your pistons first, and then you have it machined to the size of the piston. And of course, you want to have it checked out by the mechanic, the machinist first, and then you'll go over which pistons you're going to use and how far you're going to bore it over. Now, in these Texas blocks, 20 over is about as far as you want to go. I suppose for a daily driver, you could, I don't think you'd want to go 30 over, but you could put a set of 2 valve heads on there and run lower compression. You're fine. You just run this thing forever. But if you're going to beat the hell out of it and running NOS or boost, something's going to give. You're going to start cooking antifreeze. It's going to go right through. But yeah, well, that's the end of this video. After I get done doing all this, I'm going to go through. I need to wash this block one more time. I had it covered, but there's so much foreign material floating around in this garage, and the kids opening and closing the doors, leaves, dust blowing in here. I used this oil for the cylinders. Now, gun oil, it cleans good, and it's less likely to attract dust than WD-40. Why they make it that way? Because some cop who's wearing his gun every day with lint and dust, he doesn't want to have a bunch of lint and dust in his barrel and, acting like a magnet. So that was a good oil to use. Now, when I was putting the piston rings in and out, I used full synthetic. That way, wow, you know, when you grind on these things, you got like some metal burrs, and then you got to file this down a little. But if there's just a little hair file sticking out, I scratch a couple of these areas, you know, just very fine, you can't hardly tell. But the synthetic oil kind of helps prevent you from scratching the cylinder, because you're constantly taking this ring in and out, checking. And then when I when you're putting your ring in here, you don't try working it in like that. You stick it in like this. These two ends go in like that, and then push her in. I guess one step I missed is you want to get the perfect height or the perfect roundness. I use duct tape brand. You could probably use some cheap stuff, but you want it to hold up with 8 cylinders. But I'll just push it in like that. Bam. Then I can check the ring end gap. You can do it with a piston. You know, it's kind of floats around too much, and it's the original piston, so it's slightly cocked. Well, with this thing here, it's pretty dead even. If you're rebuilding motors regularly, you might want to get a more professional setup. But the reason why I have the ring gapped over here instead of here or here, you don't want to be doing that on the thrust side. If you're going to scuff anything, you want to scuff just the side that where the piston's not going to be putting any stress on. And I can just simply pull it out like this, the way it came in. Now, I don't want to mess these up at all, so I'm going to stick them back here. Push them in equally, in case there was some kind of warpage possibility. I don't know. But yeah, next thing I'm going to do is going to clean out the FM. Take some hot soapy dishwater. You want to use like Dawn dish soap. That's the best thing to do. I'm not going to use any Simple Green. And I'm going to wash everything on here. Now, cylinder walls, they will rust real fast. Well, I'm going to clean these cylinder walls out real good first, and then put probably a synthetic oil on there. And try not to wash the cylinders, and then I'll just wipe them out one more time. I know they're clean. I told the machinist this is one of the reasons why this block costs so much to get done. I took it to a machine shop. This guy is, you walk in, it's spotless. It's clean. There's no dust or debris anywhere. They have a separate room where they have their engine blocks where they prep and clean them before they take them over to the other side to prevent FMs. They got professional air filters, everything. But I told him to have this block ready so I could just slap everything together. And what do? He did. Everything was spotless clean. This had a much better wrap around it. Like, it had a hard time getting plastic off. And I told him to clean all the holes, the threads, everything. And yeah, he says, well, he was just going to do these. Well, his machine cleaned so good. I checked all the other threads. Nothing's coming out. But one thing I did before I took it to the machine shop is I degreased the heck out of it. I mean, machinists, they're going to take care of it, of course, but they're going to know how detailed you are if you already scrubbed the heck out of it. I took a wire wheel brush. It wasn't a wheel, it was a grinder type deal, and I got all the oxidized aluminum out. Then I had him clean it, and then I put my own paint in. And just, you know, moisture gets trapped here, and that little insulation in between the intake and the block, that held a lot of moisture, and there was some rat shit in there too. But yeah, I'm going to clean that up, and then I'll have another video. But yeah, he already had these plugs put in for me. All right. Well, you have a good day and God bless.